I grew up in a modest neighborhood in Frankfort, Kentucky. We didn't think we were poor. We knew the rich folks lived across town. We felt rich ourselves because we had playmates and a ball field to play on right there in the middle of the neighborhood. We built forts. We had a grand old time. We didn't need anything. Well, we did need television. Our neighborhood was late in getting television. My father always said radio was good enough, and certainly radio was good. We enjoyed radio, but we were interested in television, and we'd seen television. We had televisions at Sears and Roebuck downtown. But it was not a problem until I went to Second Street School in the 5th grade. And in that school, there were a lot of kids who already had televisions. And at recess, they would stand around on the playground and they would discuss, like young sophisticates, they would discuss what they'd watched on television the night before. Did you see Uncle Milty? I thought I would die. Oh my gosh. And the Westinghouse Theater, I love that. And the music, oh. I didn't have anything to say. Nobody wanted to talk about radio. And I wanted to cover up the fact that I didn't have a television. But I could, at school, I could feign indifference. I could say things like, I don't watch much television. I really prefer a good book and a glass of white milk. But you couldn't disguise the fact that we didn't have television from the entire world, because if you had a television in those days in Frankfort, Kentucky, with Louisville over here and Lexington over there, you had to have a big antenna to get the stations. And we live right on the main drag going into downtown Frankfort, so anybody that was driving downtown could drive past our house, look up and see that the dressers didn't have an antenna, and I could just imagine them saying, "Oh, isn't that so sad?" I thought the dressers, well, I guess they're not sophisticated people after all. I tried to explain to my parents that the lack of a television was actually damaging my psychological, emotional, social development. That was not persuasive. What was persuasive was the 1955 World Series. About 3 days before the World Series, my father drove down the driveway when he got in from work one evening, and there behind him came a Sears Roebuck truck with the most beautiful television I have ever seen. A picture tube about that big, blonde wood, sound cloth across the front, rubber tires so it could be rolled around, and after we got it installed, my father would invite people over on Saturday evenings to watch television, which is what sophisticated people did. And he would stand there with the television. He'd say, "Is there a glare on the set? I can move it for anybody if you need me to." And best of all, maybe not best of all, but right up there, we had an antenna that announced to the world that we had television. Now, you had to turn that antenna, though, to pick up Louisville or Lexington. And to do that, they had put a big carriage bolt about a foot off the ground. And my father had to go out and get on his knees in the flower garden next to the porch and grab that carriage bolt, and he'd pull that antenna around until he got the station right. Quite a process. My mother had to fine tune. We were not allowed to touch the fine tune knob. She was the fine tuner. The process was that Dad gets on the ground, I stand in the back door looking at Dad, and my sister, who's in the dining room, she talks to my mother, and we relay back and forth. And on Saturday nights, it was important to make the change from Wrestling Channel in Lexington to Louisville, and we get Perry Como, because my mother loved Perry Como. So Saturday night, we get set up. Dad's on his knees, got the periscope handles. I'm in the doorway. Mother's got her hand on the fine-tune knob, and my sister Sharon is in the dining room, and we start the process. Dad says, "How am I doing?" I say, "How am I doing?" Sharon says, "How am I doing?" Mother says, "Not yet." This goes back and forth. We're working together pretty well. Sooner or later, it's bound to happen. He's moving the antenna, and I hear Mother say, "That's it." And Sharon says to me, "That's it." And I say, "Dad, that's it." And then he leans back, and by that time, I hear her say, "You've passed it." Sooner or later in this process, my sister and I began to bicker because that's what we did. And we get all involved in a big fuss over nothing. And Dad's outside saying, "How am I doing? How am I doing?" We're not paying any attention. And then he says the magic word. He says, "Tell me something, damn it." That's a bad word. And I've got to say it. It's a freebie. I know it's a bad word. And I turn to my sister and I say, "Tell me something, damn it." And she goes, "Oh, Mother, Billy said a bad word." Mother then gets mad and says, "Billy, what did you say?" And I said, "I didn't say anything. I am simply repeating what Father said." Well, now she's upset with my father. My father's upset with us. Sharon and I are still fussing. Finally, we get this resolved. And those elements way up in the air say, "Ooh, there's Louisville. Come on, come on." We all gather back in the kitchen to get our ice cream to go to the living room to watch Perry Como. The air crackles with tension. There's anger, unresolved issues. It's tense. And then from the living room, we hear Perry Como's beautiful, beautiful, mellow voice singing something like, "Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me." So the next time you sit down at your television, pick up that remote control, hold it up to the heavens and say, "Thank you. Thank you for this remote control." And when you do, remember my parents.